My project for today is going to be a little set of, and it consists of a tray that's got a teacup and saucer. The teacup is going to have a coffee scented or fragranced candle, and it will also have a soap which is in the shape of an Oreo, and I made a little soap holder, if you want to call it a little soap holder, so that the soap doesn't just sit on the tray, and that's actually made out of polymer clay. I haven't included the making of that. I will put a video up of me making those at some stage, but for now I'm just using it on the tray. Also, the Oreo that I made that goes onto or inside the candle in the teacup, I also made that, but I didn't film that because I'm actually going to be showing how I do the soap, which is basically the same sort of idea, using soap rather than the candle. And also a teaspoon that I made out of candle wax as well, but you'll see I'll be casting one in the same mold when I do the casting now. So at the moment I am just getting the mixture mixed in nicely. Like I have said previously, water first and then the powder, because it does stop any lumps from forming, and it mixes much easier than if you try and add water to your powder. I'm just testing now to see whether it is good enough to pour. Again, like I've said before, I prefer to have mine a little bit more liquid than solid. It gives you a more time to pour the molds, because otherwise if you make it thick right from the beginning, or not thick, but if you make it thicker right from the beginning, it tends to dry quicker, and then you end up with firstly more air bubbles, because it doesn't run in smoothly. So that's a preference of mine. Other people do theirs differently. That's perfectly fine. I do mine more liquid, and it just makes the pouring a lot easier, and you can pour more molds, not only just one mold and then it's already gone thick. So that's my preference, and I have found that the best way for me to actually pour when I'm casting. So now I'm just mixing up. I'm using an aubergine color. The normal story, your screen might show up a different color. It is more pinkish aubergine than the purple that you can see. You will see in the final result that they are more of a pinky aubergine than a purple aubergine, but it's fine. I wasn't too fussy about the actual color. So here I'm just pouring the teacup. Also, I just like to give it a little wiggle and bounce around. You have to also make sure that it's got into the handle, because there you can see I'm squeezing the handle trying to get out if there are any air bubbles in there. There again, now I just give it another stir so that I can get the color into the bits that have settled a little bit in the bottom of the silicone container. And then I'll just fill up the teacup to the brim. You can see how nicely the colors are blending in. Once you pour it in, it doesn't keep the marble effect as much as the streaks look like they are going to stay, because obviously the the liquid does blend together. But that is how I like mine to be. I don't very often make solid colors because I like the marbly effect, and I prefer not single colors. Obviously, if I get somebody that wants a single color, then I'll do that. But the ones that I normally do, I normally have them with a marbled effect or two different colors or something like that. So here again, I'm just making sure that the rim of the saucer is air bubble free, just giving a little squish all the way around, and again just filling up to the top of the mold. So there we go, we've got that done. I did have quite a bit left, and I only really had to do the teaspoon, so I did decide to use the rest of it in another mold, but that will be for another day. That's not part of the gift set that I was making here. There again, giving a little bit of a shake to get all the liquid into the mold, and just filling it up again so that it sits on the rim. The teaspoon, I could have and should have made it a little bit thinner because it is quite thick, but that's just how it goes. I could have just filled it halfway in the mold so that it's not as thick, but like I said, it's just part of the decoration. It's not being used for anything. It's just part of the decoration to go onto the tray. So it doesn't really matter how thick it is. It's not going to be used for anything. And here I was just, like I said, using up the rest of the liquid to make another little candle holder, and funnily enough, it literally fitted exactly into that mold. So that's one less I'll have to make when I'm needing another little candle holder. So there we go, just filling it up again to the top of the mold. And these I will then leave to dry until they are ready to take out of the mold. Again, I leave them overnight and let them get nice and dry. These ones I actually just wanted to show when I do unmold the plate and the spare candle holder and the teaspoon, that you can actually take them out of the mold before they are completely dry. It's entirely up to you. You are taking a risk of them breaking, but if you are in a hurry, you can take them out a little bit earlier if you are in a hurry and then need them to dry outside the mold. So that's entirely up to you. Here I am just giving them a coat of their varnish. You can see that the color is more of a pinky aubergine, but it's a nice pretty color. I will show in one of my other videos that I do how I get the color to pop like that, instead of it being the light color that you see when it comes out of the mold. I actually use a heat source to do that. So you can either have it lighter in color and keep it that light, or you can use a heat source and you can get it to get the colors come out really nice and vibrant. So here I am doing the candle for the teacup. Like I said, it's a coffee flavor candle. Obviously should be a coffee cup, I should be saying, not teacup. But yeah, so I am using my soya wax, and I have added ground coffee to the actual wax, and I am just making sure that I can get it to the correct temperature. Here I'm not using a fragrance. I'm only using the coffee granules, which will give it a fragrance and its coffee color. Not that the coffee color is very dark, but it's got the coffee granules in it, which will give it its scent of coffee. I'm using a wood wick here, so my large sticky tabs come in handy because I'm using the wood wick, placing it in the center of the cup so that it burns evenly, and just getting it to the right pouring temperature. Again, using my thermometer, it's my thermometer that plugs into its little device, and on the device it gives you the exact temperature that the wax is at. So that I like to use because then it gives me the correct temperature once I need to pour it. So it's ready to pour. Just give it a bit of a swirl to get all the coffee granules evenly distributed. Some of them do fall to the bottom, but a lot of them actually stay suspended in the wax, which is perfect. Here again, when I did my measuring, I didn't use a full measure for the coffee cup because I wanted to put the whipped cream on top. So I took away as much of the wax that I needed so that I could add the whipped cream. Here is this is one of my baking tips when I'm doing icing, so that you don't end up with wax inside your nozzle. You use a 2-bag system. So here I am just cooling down the wax that I'm going to need to whip up. It's got to basically cool down enough so that it will whip. So it does almost start setting, and then I have a separate little hand mixer now that I use for my wax. I have another small one that I use for my hand work with baking, but this one I use, and I just use one of the actual whisks to whip up the actual wax. And then now you'll see how I mean about the 2-bag system. The second bag you don't cut. The first bag you cut and you place your nozzle in, which you can see in the center of the screen there. The second bag you don't cut yet. You just put in your wax, or if it's in the baking, if you're using it for baking, you put your icing in there. Then you cut the end off that bag. So this bag actually sits inside your first bag with the nozzle. So you'll see that the bag goes right to the end of the nozzle. So you don't have a nozzle that's full of icing, or in this case, wax. So now I'm just popping out the cream wax on top of the actual candle. I could have made a little bit more of the frosting wax, but I think I had just enough to finish what I actually wanted to do to make a nice little batch of whipped cream for on top. So now there is my Oreo biscuit that was made from wax that I'm going to be adding in there. And then my little spoon, which I did cut down because otherwise it would be sticking right up, and I didn't want it to be sticking too far out of the little coffee cup. So there we go. There's my decorated cup, and now I'm just going to add a little bit of coffee granules just to make it look more realistic. Not that you have an Oreo stuck in your coffee very often, but I just thought it would add something different to the actual design of the little coffee cup. So there we go. There, it's ready. I haven't trimmed the wick yet. I will trim the wick just now, but you can see the little Oreo with the teaspoon and your whipped cream with a little bit of coffee granules on the top. Right, so that is now ready to put onto the tray, onto its little saucer. There you go, trimming the wick. These are the thinner wood wicks, so it gives a wider area for burning, especially now because there is that Oreo there. It's probably going to need a little bit of a wider berth to burn. So now here is where I'm showing how the two system works. See how the actual wax bag comes out and your nozzle is almost clean. There's a tiny little bit of wax on the end of it, which you can basically just wipe out with a piece of roller towel or tissue or whatever you want to use. And it takes literally a minute or two just to clean, rather than trying to now get cold wax out of the middle of your nozzle. And especially if you're using fragranced wax, if you leave any wax inside there, it's going to give off that bit of fragrance when you're doing your next lot. So there we go. See, perfect. There's no leftover wax in there. So that is just my little tip for keeping your nozzles clean. Right, there we go. There's our little coffee cup with the spoon on the tray. I think it's already looking really cute. So now here I am showing how I do the Oreo biscuit as a soap. So I've melted my glycerine soap, and I've also again added some coffee granules to it. Unfortunately, I don't know why, when I bought the mold, I only bought one, so I have to do one at a time. And then here I am just using, because for some reason I don't have a circle that's that exact size, so I'm just using my lemon mold because the circle is exactly the right size for the inside of the Oreo soap. So here I'm just doing the second one. If I had another mold, I'd be able to do it a lot quicker. So I think I must order another one or a couple of them, so that at least I've got them when I want to do the wax or the soap molds. And then here I am doing the inside of the, if you want to call it, the icing on the inside of the biscuit, which is soap. So I've left the soap as the white so that it does look like icing. You won't notice the actual indentations of the lemon from the mold because it's going to be on the inside of the actual brown biscuit part. So it will be fine once it's done. Right, so now there I have unmolded the lemon discs, and I'm going to put the biscuit soap together. Again, just using a little bit of the white. It does run down here, but it doesn't matter because it's running back onto the white disc, so you're not going to notice any different. And then once that was dry, I just lifted it up with my scraper took off the little bit of excess white that had run down. It hadn't run onto the brown part of the cookie. And then I will put the top one on. Here I didn't put too much because I didn't want it to run down onto the brown. So I just used the spoon, the wooden spoon that I was using to stir the soap, sorry, my mistake. And then just spread it around just so that the actual Oreo part will stick to that. I didn't want it running down. And there we go. There is the little soap made. So I just had to wait for that to dry and cure nicely. There we go. See, it's a perfect little hand soap. And it's brown from the coffee granules. I think it came out really nicely with its icing in between. The icing is thicker, but obviously it's got to be a half decent cake of soap. So you can't have a tiny little bit of icing in between. And then that is the little soap dish or soap holder, if you want to call it that, just so that if you use the soap, it stands on the little soap holder so that it doesn't make your tray too sticky, and it's easier to pick it up and down. And it's in the CG for Crafty Girls, and that is made out of polymer clay. And I will put a video up of me making those at some stage, but yeah, that's just made out of polymer clay, and it can be washed as well once if you want to replace the soap. So now I'm just packaging the little soap in some cling film. I didn't have my heat gun there at that stage, so I basically just packaged it as tight as possible just to show how I do it. And then I just use the heat gun gently just to seal the edges when I do put the little stickers on the bottom to say that it is pure glycerine, and obviously it has a coffee fragrance with coffee granules. So there we go. There is our little set, our little coffee set. I think it came out really nicely. You can see the two little Oreos and the teaspoons. So quite a lot of what I do is and was involved in that little set. So I hope you enjoyed watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. Also, if you have any tips and tricks or any comments, pop them down below. That would be great. And then that's about it for today. So until next time, have a great one.